As we've been going through various points about if someone discloses to you, especially if they are a young person, which I consider to be anyone 25 or younger, because brain development is still taking place. And so the way that you react and respond to somebody who discloses something, is either brave enough or says something that maybe they didn't even intend on disclosing, but you now have a statement that something has happened, whether that's a child, a tween, a teen, or a young adult, there are certain steps that you, as the listener, need to take in order for that disclosure to be a safe and supportive environment for the person disclosing. So, we were about to talk about step basically three, which is where you reestablish safety. So, when a child or a young adult has been violated, they're completely um, in a brand new world where adults, if it was an adult or an older, an older person than they are, all of a sudden, maybe all adults are scary. Maybe there's going to be um, nowhere for them to have that control or that safe feeling. So, you, as the person that they even accidentally said something to or started to disclose to in the language that is appropriate for the age of that person, you need to make sure that they start to reestablish that they are safe, that they're safe to keep talking, that they're safe, that their privacy will be protected. Because one of the main things, especially with tweens and teens, is that they often will say something to a friend and then they'll say, "Don't tell my mom," or "Don't tell my dad," or "Don't tell anybody." And so sometimes the person disclosing might be a friend that they've heard something from. Or oftentimes for a teen or a tween, they might say, "A friend of mine told me this," when it's actually happening to them. So just being able to, first of all, we've gone over these two steps in the two previous episodes. One, you stay calm. Two, you stay steady and calm. The second one is that you believe them, and that in that belief, you're not asking leading questions, but clarifying questions. You're not telling them what to say, and when they tell you something, your response is not horror and you're, losing your mind and, you know, "Oh, no," so that they have to manage your upset. No, you are believing them and you are interested in what they have to tell you so that they don't have to manage your emotions as well as their own. So now here we are at this next juncture, which is how do you reestablish safety when they obviously were not safe, right? Something happened. So I think that that is a huge priority. That's why I think talking about it third is the appropriate placement of it, because if they don't feel safe, they won't continue to unfold maybe further details or the things that might be needed. And you don't have to be the professional to hear their story, but they won't tell someone else unless they feel safe again and feel like you are going to protect them by guiding the next steps, which might be telling law enforcement or even a social worker or someone that has the right ability to take them through that very difficult thing of disclosing, what happened. So any kind of sexual abuse takes away a young person's sense of control over their surroundings, over their environment. They don't know if they can trust adults anymore. So to reestablish that faith in the adults that will protect and will help them, you have to really be in tune with and ask questions that will hopefully make them tell you what would make them feel safe. A good example of that was for me. I slept in this basement bedroom at the very end of the hallway where my abuser, years before he ever kidnapped me and abused me, raped me, I was in this back bedroom that he had built the wall because he was a handyman, he owned a furniture store. So there's this wall that he built in this long room that we shared downstairs into our own separate bedrooms, you know? And, "Oh, I have the furniture and it's wholesale and let's make these rooms." These girls are getting older, they need their own space, and of course, we were all in agreement at the time, it was all very exciting. Well, that downstairs back bedroom at the very end of the hallway that had the 2 outside windows, one on each wall that went out to the backyard and the side yard from my bedroom, which is where what I went through, um, when I was taken the second time, became like this torture chamber for me. It became such an unsafe place. It was like one of the scariest parts of my house that I never really truly got over. But at one point, I remember just saying, I can't, I don't want to sleep down there. It's too cold." I made up all these excuses. And, luckily mom and dad were totally fine with me moving upstairs into the den where there was a bed, the little office room that was, you know, just down the other hallway upstairs, but next to mom and dad's bedroom and Susan's bedroom. And then Karen was still downstairs. And I think she kind of suffered a lot of feelings of being alone, loneliness, abandonment when I did that, and for lots of other reasons. But that too, I think, is an important thing. The orbit is also affected by the abuse. And so being very aware of how other members or other children in the family might be feeling. So other people in the mix of someone who's now disclosing abuse, that you're trying to keep them feeling safe and feeling secure and getting back in control over their environment, it might have been a really good idea for my parents to have asked me, "Would you feel more comfortable?" Because they wouldn't have asked me about safety, because I put on the perfect show as a young tween and early teenager, that I was totally fine, right? Nobody knew what was happening to me. And I felt safe in my home with my family, but I did not feel safe in that bedroom. And only if they had posed the question in a way that didn't make the rebellious teenager who's now brainwashed that she's saving a dying planet, and she needs to go and work at the fun center with Birchtold and needs to go, back, and knows that she has to get back together with him. For those of you that know my story, it was severe brainwashing. I would never have, if they had said, "Would you feel more safe, to be upstairs?" I would have said, "No, I feel perfectly fine," because I was a teenager and a tween, and I had this other narrative, this altered reality going on. So it's really important that you, as a parent or a caretaker, the nurturer, the foster, if you're a foster parent of a child that's been removed from a home, that's a scary situation for them. They already are in a new environment. You have to be so in tune with what are normal reactions from, a 11, 10, 11, 12 year old, and a 13, 14 year old, and a 15, 16 year old, to your trying to help them feel in control and safe. So at a younger age, you would have to just say, let's move you. Do you wanna be closer to mommy's room, or do you want me to sleep across your bed?" You know, my sister adopted 2 children, and they had a lot of didn't wanna sleep alone, didn't wanna sleep in their own rooms, and so she would sleep across the foot of their bed, the other direction, and she had a big lazy boy chair, she would sleep in that chair, and they both slept in the same room and the same bed for a long, long time, and it was just because that sense of safety, security, and for the person to start feeling like they are in control of their environment instead of out of control is one of the most important things that you can do for them. So bless my parents' hearts, they never said those exact words, but I got to a point where I could not sleep. I just couldn't sleep downstairs anymore, um, and they, of course, they were fine and let me sleep up there, and then my sister and my cousin David and my best friend Caroline, they all were redoing my bedroom the summer that I went to the drama camp, which is where they found letters that were hidden away and started asking me questions. It was the summer I was turning 16, which was a big deal in my story that they were redoing that downstairs bedroom. So I would want to be in it and happened to find some of those letters from Birchtold and notes and funny things that were said in the letters, like who is Zeta and Zethra? Those were the aliens that, anybody that knows my story that's listening, you'll relate to these things. But the point is that you have to be very in tune and very intuitive to make sure that you are reestablishing that safety for them. So you can establish plans. Like if you start to feel uncomfortable, I have this thing. It's a monitor. Don't call it a baby monitor, but it's a monitor. I could keep that, you know, by so I can hear you if you start to cry at night or if you have a bad dream. You can go through a ritual. Let's open the closet. Let's look under the bed. Let's have a story. Let's make sure you have a ritual around bedtime is a big deal when someone's been sexually assaulted. Going to sleep poses a whole lot of problems. It's dark. It's is there a closed door? Did you close the door? Maybe they need the door open, or maybe they want it closed, so maybe they need a lock on it. I mean, there are so many factors that could come into play. Um, well into my 20s as an adult, I looked under the seat of my car. I looked under my bed. I looked in the back seat. I was driving. I was in my 20s and I was looking under the car, looking in the back seat, and I knew that there were no aliens, that none of that was true. But the feeling of being unsafe and being watched stayed with me well into my early adulthood. Probably mid 20s, maybe even late 20s after I was married and had moved to Florida to work at Disney World with my ex-husband, my son's father. I started to have some sort of sense of, I don't know, there was something more safe in every aspect of my life. So having an abuse lessens a young person's faith in adults. So, trying to reestablish that kind of safety, reestablish their safety within their environment. And then also, if the person that violated or abused the child is still in their life, like things don't happen immediately. That person may not be removed from the home and the child may be attached to that person. So there are some things that you have to make safe, even if the child wants to spend time with their abuser, which happens a lot. And this is another thing that is rarely talked about. So be sure that you make a plan for that safety to be reestablished and to be safe, even if the child, the tween, the young adult, teen want to spend time with someone that they can't, then you have to make those parameters and those rules. Um, so the things that they might need could be different from what you expect, is what I'm saying. If you can get them to tell you what would make them feel comfortable, what would make them feel safe, you know, then great. But sometimes they may have a request. One of the articles that I was reading said they might ask something that you're thinking is not necessary, but to them it's necessary, like wearing two pairs of pajamas to bed, or they want to sleep with under. I've heard stories where kids want to sleep under their bed, or they want to sleep in a sleeping bag or a tent or something to the side of their bed, or they want to sleep in your bedroom. And sometimes after this kind of violation has happened, you have to really be willing to, you know, allow them to do what makes them feel safe for a long enough period of time that you can reestablish that. So take those extra steps to give, the person a greater sense of safety, even if the requests that they make seem irrational. Build up their sense of confidence and security. That's crucial to their continued, development for one thing, and also that they'll continue to talk. And maybe now they're not talking to somebody they know. Now they're being questioned by or asked to talk to, a stranger, even if that stranger is a very qualified therapist or an early childhood, psychologist or a police officer. That can be scary because, they have all those clothes on and they look a certain way. I know that some departments are really trying to make changes in how they interview young people, how they're dressed when they do that, bedside manner, basically, the empathy, trying to be trauma informed so that it's a less scary um, process. But the process is scary for anybody, even adults, when you're trying to disclose and you're trying to tell someone about your rape. That is not an easy or comfortable process. First of all, you're already dealing with shame and you're already dealing with, something happened to you in secret and now you're opening it up. So the final piece of that safety puzzle is be very careful that you don't share this very private, what feels extremely private to the child or the young person, and just start sharing it with other people. And that sense of privacy, that can bring great embarrassment. They kids get embarrassed if you, call a body part by its real name as they get older. As kids, they're fine with it and they don't know there's anything wrong at all and there's nothing wrong. But at the same time, as they get older and there's other friends and, that's a very private thing that they have shared, and it's very embarrassing if they hear you talking about it to someone else on the phone or, that's in your kitchen and they're just in earshot, and if you don't need to tell another person at this point, don't. So it's really on a need to know basis, and I am not promoting that we keep secrets in families. That's not what I'm saying at all. It's really, really important that we do bring in the authorities, that we do go the distance because that perpetrator most likely will just move on to another child in the family, a different or a neighbor, person, or it's just not going to stop. It's almost never one and done. And so I'm not promoting don't talk to the right people, but as you need, to talk to other people, then you also prepare the person who disclosed to you about that. And sometimes they'll fight you and they'll cry and don't tell them and I don't want to talk about it anymore, or they'll start to deny. So you have to really establish safety and security so that when that time comes, there's, even if it's hard, there's a willingness to move forward. Um, so just remember that, depending on the age of the person disclosing, any kind of private information being shared with someone else that feels so personal is really hard on that, the victim person that is dealing with this horrible assault, this violation of their private, most important thing they are supposed to have control over, their body. So as we know, abuse can cause all kinds of feelings of embarrassment, of shame, blame. It was done in secret, and it was a violation to the very core of that adolescent or young adult. So when you do start to share with the right people, they have to have regained that sense of safety, control over their environment, and that they are going to be okay because they can trust adults again to do the right thing. We'll talk next time about how you free an adolescent, young adult, of the self blame, the self shame that they immediately absorb. It's just there. There's not like a way to avoid it. It's going to be there. So, how do you help them through that? That will be our next discussion. Thanks.